Wasting time. Wasting time.
All right, 11 questions with BulletL, who is a Apex Legends pro player, has played a couple of other esports titles as well in his tenure. I heard actually that he was a pretty good World of Tanks player, but I'm not sure that you've ever gone pro in that one. Anyway, let's get this one kicked off, Bullet. I wanted to ask you, what sort of drew you to Apex Legends initially? What was it about the game that sort of brought you?
I think like in general, it probably would have been like just the pacing of the game compared to everything else that was available at the time. I think I was initially playing PUBG, and as you know, like it's relatively sluggish and primitive in its design and movement. And Apex was just released. I was like, wow, like this is absolutely insane. So just jumped on the Apex train, and yeah, it was absolutely addicted.
All right, well, so it's interesting that you mentioned movement there because that was actually the next question that I wanted to lead into, right? This is very much sort of felt like it's kind of your brand, right? I know you release a lot of videos on YouTube and stuff like that around your movement, and a lot of people, I think, sort of respect the movement and whatever that you have in the game. Was that something that you like actively tried to learn? Like, were you going into the training rooms and trying to figure out wall jumps and super glides and all this sort of stuff, or was that something that sort of naturally came to you? Were you like sort of naturally inclined to that kind of thing in the game? And did you have to work on it necessarily, or was it like a natural thing?
So I initially I was just kind of really enjoying the flow and the pacing of the game. Like for me, it was more about the speed. Like you can kind of drop in, like go through a game like so quickly, run at everyone. It was just like so much fun, and the aim style as well, like kind of hooked me. But I think like as time went on, like I started like seeing a couple different players. Like I guess I'll throw in like Asu and Lyric is probably like one of the bigger ones actually. And his mechanics in game were just like incredible at the time. Like he was way ahead of the curve really early on. And just kind of seeing that, I was like, wow, like this is absolutely insane. Like I want to be doing this as well. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of like noticing the potential skill level and trying to basically like get to that point. And yeah, I mean, just bit of practice and playing the game a lot, and yeah, just kind of over time, you just pick things up and try and yeah, make it all work together and into a little masterpiece.
Okay, well, speaking of masterpieces, or maybe on the opposite side of the spectrum, let's talk about Split 2 playoffs. It actually looked like it was going to be pretty good for you guys on the first couple of days. And,
Oh yeah.
then on day 3, you ended up placing 17th overall at the tournament. So, playing with Sutoraiku, yourself, Waltzy, and Fussy, I think going in, maybe there wasn't a huge amount of expectation for this roster to like win or come top 2 or top 3 or anything like that, but going into the final day after having those first 2 days perform quite well, was 17th kind of a result that you were happy with? And for Waltzy and Fussy as well, was it something that you were happy with, or were you a bit disappointed with that result?
Yeah, we're very happy with 17. It was absolutely amazing.
I'm sure you were.
Nah, but but yeah, I mean, we were definitely extremely disappointed by that result. It was definitely given how we played like the previous 2 days, it was really like a shot to the knee. Like it was pretty rough. I'm not gonna lie, but yeah, I mean, we kind of got to showcase our potential on those 2 initial days. Like we went in swinging. The first day actually, like we started off pretty slow, and then we changed character comps and then just started going crazy. Like I think we had like like tied for the most wins going into finals, like
Yep.
along with Optic Gaming, who are like incredibly good, and Empire, who are also incredibly good. So yeah, I mean, we were just like really feeling it after the character comp change, which was like super out of nowhere. Like we literally picked up a character that we've never played before together ever. So
You
yeah, I
played
mean, we just
Crypto,
kind of
right? You went from Corsair
yeah,
to
that's
Crypto.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were right as well, by the way. I think you had 3 wins. You, Optic, and Empire had 3 wins on
Yep.
the first 2 days, which ultimately was where you ended up. You finished with 3 wins as well. I don't think you got any on the final day. But let's talk about days 1 and 2 to day 3. Like, what actually sort of changed there? Was it I don't know, like a pressure thing, getting caught in the moment kind of a thing? Because obviously day 3 was like the finals, basically, right? Day 1 and 2 was like maybe seeding. It was elimination in a sense on day 2 as well, but day 3 was like the big show. So was it something like that kind of got to maybe you or your teammates, or was there something else, or was it just bad luck, maybe bad ring pulls or whatever?
I mean, BR's like in general, like a lot has to go right for you to also do well. But I think in general for us, it was a combination of things. Like it was probably like a combination of having an off day, like a decent amount of pressure. Obviously, like there was a lot on the line. And yeah, like it was just the schedule was a bit odd. Like I think we probably could have gotten a lot more sleep leading up to it because we had to wake up like super early for the COVID test. So I think like that all those things kind of combined, like it kind of like threw us off a little bit and led to a pretty poor performance on our part.
I mean, I remember that schedule being absolutely fucking crazy. Like it was like 18 games a day for the first 2 days, but you guys might have only had to play 12 games on the second day, if I remember correctly. But yeah, it was crazy. Anyway, I mean, I guess, overall, whatever, it is what it is. It was still good experience.
That's it.
I want to take it more in the direction of APAC South in general, though. Obviously thinking about yourselves, Burger, Reignite, and was it the 2 Indonesian teams as well that attended? I don't think any of the Thai teams did manage to make it to Split 2. What did you sort of think about the relative strength of the APAC South region in general at Split 2 playoffs? Were you, maybe... At least in my opinion, I'll say I was positively surprised with how well the performances, played out, especially given the fact, obviously, that Reignite won, blah, 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 all that. And sort of tying into that question, do you think APAC South should have more than the 5 slots at these international events?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure after champs, provided we keep up like a really solid result, we will definitely see some changes to those. The way I guess like the system is in terms of like slots per region. So I mean we really have to wait and see after champs like what those kind of changes look like. But yeah, for the most part, I think it was really awesome to see 3 APAC South teams in the finals. Like we really showed up, and conveniently all of them Australian teams. But yeah.
I've always wondered, and this is an aside, I'm not going to count this as one of my questions, but what is it
I know
that
where this is
makes
going.
Australian teams so good at Apex Legends, right? Because in other esports titles, like let's be real, Aussie teams, generally speaking, don't perform that well, even within Asia. What is it that for some reason makes us so good at Apex Legends?
To be honest, I've got absolutely no idea. Like, I think I know what we do differently in terms of style, but you're right. It's like generally Australia's like pretty far behind the curve for most esports titles. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure. We just kind of like we've been playing like a lot, and basically everyone's been playing since the beginning. Like everyone in those top 3 teams, like basically has been playing since the beginning. So yeah, I mean, I think it might have something to do with it, but yeah, it's like definitely odd.
Maybe it's just because you guys are playing in like, you're playing with like sandbags, right? You're running on sand, or you're sandbagging or something by playing with 150 ping or whatever to all the APAC tournaments, and then you go play LAN and it's just like, freelo, easy peasy.
Yeah.
All right, so moving back to the Split 2 playoffs kind of discussion, right? Or maybe even moving on from that. You've obviously made a roster change since then with Sutoraiku. Waltzy moved to Burger. Whether that was his decision or your decision, I don't know, but maybe you can shed some light on that. But more so, I wanted to ask you about the player that you've picked up. Is Reco or Reco-son, or again, like I'm not super familiar with this guy, right? I haven't seen him playing in any of the ALGS events that we've had domestically here, or maybe he has and he's sort of flown under my radar. But I think if for someone like me who covers the APAC region doesn't know a huge amount about him, then surely a lot of people don't know a huge amount about him. So, what was the methodology behind this picking up this player? I guess, what's the reason behind picking him up, and B, what do you hope to sort of achieve with him? Because it sort of does surprised me in a way, right? When we've seen previously with these kind of roster changes happen in the APAC South region, right? Player A will go to Team B, and then a player from Team B will go to the initial team. Like you almost trade in a way. So why did you not pick up Pricey, for example?
Well, basically, like I probably don't want to get like too deep into things, but basically like for the same reason like Pricey got dropped from the team is kind of like he's kind of like taking a bit of a step back from the game after I guess like his experience at that LAN. So yeah, I mean that was kind of the reason that we didn't really go after Pricey, but the main reason, or like a big part of why I chose Reco is that I previously played with him for an entire year straight competitive scrims, like almost every single day. Like I qualified with him in basically it was like 2019 to 2020, qualified for the Texas Major that didn't end up happening due to COVID. So I have played a ridiculous amount with Reco in the past, and because we didn't have like a ridiculous amount of time coming, literally basically like off the plane, we had like maybe like 20, no, not even like 10 hours to find a replacement because yeah, it's just a bit inconvenient. So I just went with my gut instinct. Like I knew Reco was gonna like pop off, and yeah, I mean Reco's just an incredibly talented mechanical player. Like I don't know how much you've seen of him, but I could like show you some pretty incredible clips that he used to go off in scrims, and yeah, I mean like he'd even surprise like there's a clip of Reco playing Watson back in the day, and Ras like watched him in an end zone, and Reco did like some incredibly crazy like mechanical movement with Watson fences, and Ras and his whole team were like freaking out watching him. So yeah, I mean, if you can manage to get Ras like all riled up and like excited off a play, like yeah, I mean, enough said, right?
Well, hopefully
One of the best players.
we'll get to see a little bit of that at Champs. But I
Yeah.
look at your roster now on paper, and I think it looks like there's a little bit less experience than what the one going into Split 2 playoffs was. And maybe I'm wrong in that perception because I'm not super up to date on who Reco is, and I wasn't involved in Apex back in 2019. But I look at it from the perspective of, okay, you picked up Fussy last season, who has now got one split plus an event under his belt. So I guess actually in terms of international events, he is now one of the more experienced Apex Legends players in APAC South. So granted, I'll give you that. You have yourself, who's been to now 3 of the major events in Apex Legends. But just, again, like looking at it from face value, you know, you don't have the players with the same tenure as like Waltzy obviously played in multiple seasons of ALGS. Fussy now has only got one of those under his belt. As far as I know, Reco maybe has played like some of the earlier ones, but I don't think he's played a huge amount. So it feels like to me like you're the one experienced player on your roster, and then you've got sort of 2 quote unquote, again, I say this in the loosest of terms, but like newer players, right? Or at least maybe less experienced in recent times. Let's go with that.
Of course.
Players. So how do you sort of feel like that's going to impact your gameplay at Raleigh? Do you think you're going to maybe have to take a bit more of like a leadership role or something like that? I know you are the end game leader already, or you were in previous iterations of Sutoraiku, but how do you sort of feel like that's going to impact you guys going in? Is there like any sort of concerns over maybe an inexperience factor or anything like that?
I mean, to some degree, there's definitely like a little bit of inexperience across the board, like between Reco and Fussy. But I think like I don't know. I'm just really confident, to be honest. Like I know one of the issues that we had in like the previous lineup was it was a bit frustrating with roles. Like we had Fussy on Gibraltar. Having a control player on Gibraltar is just not ideal. Just like there's not many players in the entirety of like Sweden, or like you'll see at Champs, like there's very few controller Gibby players because it's just not a good character to put a controller player on, just because he's like big and yeah. But yeah, I think like with Waltzy leaving and now having like a big, not really a big, but a decent change. Like Fussy's now playing like a more aggressive role, which suits his play style. I'm able to play Valkyrie and control like a lot more, and I also have like a lot more freedom too now. And then yeah, Reco just kind of slots in on Gibby, and my synergy with Reco is really ridiculous. Like I've played a bunch of different games with him over like the last 3 years, and we're just always on the same wavelength. It's so good.
All right, good to hear. Maybe we'll see you
Yeah.
do pretty well, better than 17th.
Um,
That's the
I hope so.
hope. Moving away from your team and yourself specifically, then, and maybe toward the event coming up as a whole. Obviously, a big
Yeah.
talking point is going to be Reignite's chances of going back to back. They won split 2
Of course.
playoffs. They did it without Jen Burton, and now, in theory, hopefully, everyone's going to be okay when it comes to COVID. And hopefully
Yeah.
Jen Burton's going to be able to play. So, I think you're in a fairly unique position, obviously, having played in APAC South for a long time and played against this team and these guys. So I'd love to get your thoughts on, what you think the team would look like with Jen Burton coming back in. Do you think it's a stronger looking team? Do you think they have a good chance of going back to back? Was it a fluke that they won split 2 playoffs, or are they potentially the best team in the world? What are your thoughts on that whole situation?
Well, I'm sure as everyone knows by now, Jen Burton is probably the best mechanical controller player. And yeah, I mean, obviously Zero is an incredibly good IGL and Sharky is an incredibly good Gibby player. Like, he just doesn't make mistakes. So, like, obviously that's a very big recipe for success right there. And there's no reason why they can't go back to back at that event. But yeah, I mean, who knows? Like, obviously to win an event, and like even Hal said this before, like you do need like a decent amount of luck to go your way, because otherwise, things become incredibly difficult. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely very possible, and yeah, I mean, we'd have to wait and see, to be honest. Who knows like how the dynamic will work, because like JMW might have not really said too much and kind of just let Zero IGL, whereas Jen Burton might have a bit more input, and who knows, like might make a bad call, which might cost a round. Like you honestly don't know. But obviously, like you can't really put it past them. All three of them are incredibly good. So
I mean,
yeah, just have to wait and see.
I've said the exact same thing on another show that I was on, where it was like, if Jen Burton was in that roster instead of JMW, they
Yeah.
may not have won. And it's not
That's
because
it.
I think JMW is better than Jen Burton, or, it would have been a better team without him or something like that. It's just
Yeah.
because, like, who knows what would have happened? Would they have made a different decision because he was there, and that ripple effect might have changed the course of history? We don't know. But
Yeah.
obviously, we'll have to see how they go. I think they're still definitely a top contender for champs, and I'm looking forward to sort of seeing how
sure.
that plays out. But the other question I had for you around champs was, obviously we've seen, like for the vast majority, I think most of the teams are very, very similar to split 2 playoffs, but there are some more notable additions and changes, obviously coming from the APAC South region. We're looking at teams like Dreamfire and EXO now sort of playing in champs instead of split 2 playoffs. So we had the 2 Indonesian teams. Do you think as a whole, like the split 2 playoffs maybe was a weaker sort of lineup of teams, or was it a stronger lineup of teams? Like how does the whole lineup, like the whole field look going into champs versus split 2 playoffs? Do you think it's going to be a harder event just from the teams that are attending?
I mean, yes and no. Like there are some like incredibly good teams missing out. Like think G2, and it's like really, really sad to not see Sentinels make it. There's like a bunch of really talented teams that are unfortunately missed out. But yeah, I mean, when you get to the event, like literally anything can happen. Like who expected G2 to like not do well? Like COVID impacting scars. Like there's just so much that can happen in such like a short amount of time. So it's really hard to say, to be honest, until it happens.
Okay, well, I'll give you a more pointed question then. Who are the top 3 teams at champs? Let's say like this is your prediction.
Oh.
Who's number 1, 2, and 3? If you're gonna, go on the analyst desk for a second here.
All right. All right. This one's a bit of a tough one.
Mhm.
Obviously, like I won't include my team because, like,
Obviously, because they're gonna be number
Yeah.
1 anyway. Like you can't do that.
yeah, exactly.
Give everyone
I
else a
don't want to
chance.
like spoil it. Yeah, but I honestly think. Let's see.
I feel like you have to have Optic in there. I feel like you're trolling if you don't have Optic. Based on how
Yeah,
they
I
played at
mean-
split 2 playoffs.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough because like there's so many good teams. I'm honestly gonna put Unite in there again because I just feel like Unite. I don't know. They're just a different breed. They kind of run their own comp. They just do whatever they want, and they're such a good team. So probably go with Unite. I feel like maybe who else? Maybe NRG. Honestly, I think they have the potential to do really well. Like unfortunately, that are pretty unfortunate finals. But yeah, I think for them, they might just like, turn around and go crazy. And who else? The third team. This is tough. Maybe Team Liquid, honestly. They are so underrated. so glad they did well in like the most recent event. They are so underrated. Like all three of them are incredibly good. And Guild is probably like up there as like one of the most mechanical controller players by like a long shot, up there with Jen, I'd say. He's really good.
Yeah, I mean, they were super consistent at Split 2 playoffs.
They were.
I think they,
Yeah.
you know, they could have very easily won. Like, there was a world definitely where they could
Oh,
have
yeah.
won.
Yeah. They were in form the whole time. They were so good.
All right, that's a good shout. All right, last question then. In a little bit more of a holistic sense, what do you think about the direction that Apex Legends esports is kind of headed in, right? Are you happy with how, you know, the split format works and then these 3 international events a year? Well, I guess this year it's only been 2, but in theory it's 3.
Yeah.
You know, are you happy with that, or would you like to see more? Would you like to see less? What do you think about just the esports scene in general?
I think if I'm being realistic, it's a decent amount. It's like a pretty solid amount of events, but unfortunately for our region, we don't get to see like those other events that kind of fill the gaps between the LANs and the Pro League. Like people in NA more specifically get all these other smaller tournaments, you know, 50K, 100K, 20K, all like throughout the year scattered around. And like there's a decent amount of them to kind of fill in that time and I guess like add more to like the year. Whereas like for us in APAC South, like we really don't get much other than, you know, Pro League. And then obviously that leads on to like the LAN events. But yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to see more in our region. I don't know how that would happen. Um, but yeah, it would really be nice to see like more. Even EU, to be honest, they don't really get too many other like third-party organized tournaments, I guess you could say. But yeah, it'd be nice to see more of them, more events in general. But yeah, I know like obviously LAN events are really big and they take like a lot of logistical you know, planning and it's a lot of effort by a huge team. And yeah, I mean, I can't really say like there should be like X amount, you know. But yeah, it'd definitely be nice to see some more support in like a bit of a smaller form, I guess.
Yeah, third-party TOs. There you go. Get on
Yeah,
it.
that's it.
If you like smaller tournaments, don't necessarily need to be massive prize pools or massive tournaments, but something to play for would be nice. That about wraps it up. That was, I think, you know, maybe 12 or 13 questions instead of 11, but hey, sometimes you just got to make do with what you got. Just, you want to say anything before we go, or are you happy?
No,
Shout-outs?
I'm amazing.
Okay, sweet. All right. Well, let's wrap it up there then. Thank you very much, Bullet, for the chat, and
Thank you.
see you guys next time.
Appreciate it.
Wasting time. Wasting time.